have grown something of an addiction to Twinkies and Twizzlers, which is, I was going to put like a fisheye lens on the camera so you could fit all of me in the screen. There's a lot more of me than there was 6 months ago.
What's a Twinkie? Because in certain areas that I sometimes socialise in, that means something quite different.
Something very different, doesn't it? Yes, a Twinkie is a cream-filled...
Oh, God.
Cake.
It's a cake, sure. It's a cake.
It's a cake.
I slightly regret bringing it up. In other ways, don't. It's a cake. Betty, Charles Leclerc. It's a cake.
Yeah, let's talk about Charles Leclerc. Aston Martin.
Speaking of snacks.
Speaking of snacks. I'd have him covered in chocolate. Anyway, Aston Martin, Mercedes and McLaren, all teams that
It's not even subtle. I'd have him covered in chocolate. What's wrong with you? Oh.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Fast and the Curious. You should know the drill by now, but if you don't, this is the Formula One podcast with myself, Betty Glover, Christian Hugill and Greg James, and we preview and debrief the Grand Prix and chat to some of the biggest names in the sport. Our latest big name interview was with Isaac Hadjar, by the way, and some dodgy internet as well. He became yet another Formula One driver to casually snack whilst being on the podcast. He loves a yoghurt, does Isaac Hadjar. Iconic behaviour. You can scroll back if you missed that one and have a listen. Also, if you haven't already, hit subscribe, whether you're watching or listening. It's always really, really helpful. So to preview the Singapore Grand Prix, it is me and Christian and a man who knows a thing or two about the F1 paddock.
Yeah, Betty, hello. It's lovely to be with you. This is a man who has spent years in said paddock. He's explained the sport to a new generation on Drive to Survive. Nowadays can be found stateside. We are delighted to say he's a friend of the podcast. We're delighted he's on for his first scheduled appearance. His only other appearances have come when it's hitting the fan. So welcome, in beautiful normal timing, Will Buxton is here. Hello, Will.
Thank you so much for inviting me on when there isn't breaking news that we're all panicking over. It's lovely to be a bit more relaxed.
To be fair, you are a great go-to when is hitting the fan and everything's happening and going on, and we're like, oh my God, we need Will Buxton on to explain this to everyone.
Break glass for Buxton, emergency.
Thank you. No, it's lovely to be back, guys. Thank you.
So coming up on the podcast today, could Charles Leclerc be leaving Ferrari, or could Christian Horner be coming back to the sport? I didn't think that would be happening. And we're, of course, going to preview this weekend's Singapore Grand Prix. But Christian, Hugill, not Horner, there's only one place that we can start, and that is with the really sad news about Roscoe. He was Lewis Hamilton's bulldog. He died at the age of 12 this week. One of, if not the most famous dog in the world. I don't think there is a more famous dog than Roscoe.
That's a podcast in itself. The most famous, like Santa's Little Helper from The Simpsons. You're talking here, Lassie.
Lassie's a big one, yeah.
No, we wanted to talk about this because, like, it's we are all big dog fans, aren't we? It's so sad when you lose a pet. So bless Lewis. We are sending our love and our prayers and our best wishes to Lewis. Are you a dog person?
I grew up with the most wonderful dog, who was a rescue dog called Ruddles.
Oh,
actually, she was originally called Cuddles, but my father decided he could not walk around the Malvern Hills shouting Cuddles, so she was renamed Ruddles, and she was a gorgeous, dopey thing, and big dog guy. My sister has a pug. Which is a bit more snuffly, but really, really sad news about Roscoe, because he had a longer tenure in Formula One than most drivers, more than most team. Like, he was around like a decade and a half that he was in the paddock. It's genuinely like I really feel for Lewis because he's gone through so many changes in his life with the people who surrounded him in his Formula One career. You know, he's changed management, he's changed the people around him, Changed team recently, but there have been so many ups and downs of the people that Lewis has surrounded himself with, and I've felt for the longest of times that he lived quite a singular and quite a lonely existence sometimes at races, and so Roscoe was that one constant for him for a decade and a half of as pets can be, that one kind of dependable part of your life that never leaves you. So it's going to be a huge loss for him, and I really feel for him.
It's so sad because I'll also just miss. So there was one time, like you sort of really, Roscoe was a brilliant example of how ridiculous the sport is, because you would, I remember being sat. Mercedes is one of those teams that when you're inside Mercedes at a race weekend, it feels a bit more formal than some of the others. It has to be said. But yeah, it would bring it back down to earth when you're just sat there and sort of out the corner of your eye, this bulldog would just stroll through this like super high security motorhome that's the base of like this elite sports team, and a bulldog was just strolling through on his own, and it's like, oh, there's Roscoe.
Yeah,
like he's a member of the
most
team.
People get turned away at the door, and Roscoe just sort of trots in on his own.
In.
But I remember when he first started turning up to races, and there was this big kind of brouhaha about it, like, is it too loud? Is it too noisy for dogs to be there? Should there be pets in the paddock? And all these kind of questions, and Lewis just normalized it. Lewis just changed the game like he always does. He said, "This is what I'm doing," and deal with it basically.
And that dog was so chill.
So chill. Chillest dog ever, wasn't it?
I hosted the main stage at Silverstone, not this year, just gone the year before. Obviously, Lewis won. So I'm stood backstage, and we're all like a state of high alert because Lewis is about to be brought out onto the stage to, speak to the fans. His first win in forever, and it's amazing. And again, just being led on the lead, you've got like tens of thousands of people screaming outside on the stage waiting for Lewis. Lewis's team comes in, and just Roscoe being led like it's a dog walking through the park. Roscoe is just trotting through backstage, completely normalised to this whole thing. Lewis brings him out onto the stage, and honestly, Roscoe stole the show with like Lewis has won his first Grand Prix, but the whole crowd are just looking at Roscoe, just stood there on the main stage, like, hi, yeah, this is fun.
I met Roscoe in 2023 at Silverstone, and what you were saying about Mercedes when you sort of walk into the motorhome, I was there. Pep Guardiola was in the corner. Lewis Hamilton's upstairs somewhere, but the only thing anybody was interested in was Roscoe. No one cared about Pep Guardiola being sat there with Toto Wolff having an espresso. Everyone was just crowding around Roscoe, who was just loving life. Like, that dog must have had the best life. Can you imagine some of the experiences that he's experienced?
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Also loved that Lewis told the story of him being in the cinema over the winter with him. And Lewis said he wasn't watching the film, he was just watching the dog watch the telly. We've all done that with dogs. We've all done it. Anyway, that was a lovely tribute to Roscoe. I've enjoyed us sharing Roscoe memories.
Yeah, he was cute, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, bless him. Sending our love to Lewis. If anyone else has any F1 related pet stories, by the way, let us know, because we love this. I've named my dog after a footballer. Christian loves dogs. Will, I'm sure if you had a dog, it would be called, I don't know, McLaren or something.
McLaren.
I don't know. That would be up to my daughters.
Yeah.
It'll probably be called Taylor on current.
After Taylor Swift.
Obviously. Everyone's very excited for Friday.
There's other big Taylors out there in the world. I don't know. Could have been a fan of Taylor something else.
Taylor Lautner. Not seen as much now. Not seen as much now.
Big in 2012.
Yeah, not as on as much now. Anyway, maybe your pet has met a Formula One driver. Maybe you've named your pet after a particular person in Formula One. Any pets-related Formula One anecdotes, please, at Fast Curious Pod on socials, and we'll do some of those in the Singapore Deep.
Just while we're talking about F1 news, Max won his first GT3 race last weekend, but of course he didn't just win, he just absolutely smashed it like Max Verstappen does. If you missed this, it was the NLS9, the 9th round of the Nürburgring. That is a name that
Well done.
every time I read that, I'm like, How do I
Nice.
say it? How do I say it? It's an endurance series, isn't it? A 4-hour race around one of the most famous circuits in the world. Will, can you explain to everyone just how impressive this is? That Max can just get into a car that is totally different to the series he races in and just dominates.
Yeah, and it's not an easy track. It's the Nordschleife. So it's, about 10 times as long as most Grand Prix tracks. Very treacherous, very difficult to memorize it. Jackie Stewart, famously said that, he struggled to remember all the corners because it was such a long track. What I really like about this, and first we've got to give props not just to Max but to Chris Lullum, his teammate, who started as a sim racer, stepped up to racing alongside Max, and Max rates him really, really highly. And he did obviously a lot of the driving as well alongside Max. And Jan Mardenborough, that the Gran Turismo movie was made about, who obviously started off as a sim racer and then became a racing driver himself. Jan was second in that race on his return to the Nordschleife after a massive accident, which, if you've seen the movie, you know all about. He was P2. So really cool podium and great for Chris, and for Max. But what I really like about Max going and driving in NLS is he had to go and prove that he was worthy. He had to go and actually qualify for a license. This is a
Did he?
Yeah,
I missed this.
Yeah. So they wouldn't just say, "Oh yeah, you're Max Verstappen. Of course you know how to drive a car." It was like, no, you've got to go through, the proper procedures to get your license to come and race in this series. And he wasn't too big for that. He accepted it and said, "Yeah, of course, I'll jump through whatever hoops you want me to jump through. I'll go through the process." And I love that humility about him as well, and that he did that to allow himself to go and race and put on, such a good show. And, I think Frank Stippler, who is a huge name on the Nordschleife, he's done the 24 hours of the Nürburgring, I think it's something like 25 times. So nobody knows that circuit. Nobody knows the challenge of that, probably better than him. And he was full of praise for Max, for the job that he did, for the lap times he was running, because Max was only a couple of seconds off setting a new lap record around the place. It just speaks to the quality of Max, that on his off weeks, he's gone and qualified for a license, turned up, and didn't just win, absolutely smashed it. Job well done. Job hugely well done.
You'd think he's got other things to do. Do you know what I mean? But surely there's other things that he should
lives
be doing
to race.
Or could be doing.
He lives to race. That's it.
He loves it.
Well, while we're on Max, Red Bull have obviously made this car more drivable, right, in recent weeks. We've seen Max do what he's done recently. That gap to the championship leader, Oscar Piastri, is 69 points.
69, dude.
7 races left, plus sprints. Forget how many sprints there are. I always forget when it's a sprint weekend until about 8 seconds before the sprint starts. I have just no capacity to remember it's a sprint weekend. Anyway, Will Buxton.
Why are they qualifying on a Friday? What's going on?
What's happening? Oh, it's a sprint race. Fine. Sorry. I've also forgotten it's a sprint race whilst there on many an occasion. Anyway, Will, can Max Verstappen win this year's Formula One World Championship, do you think?
We had this discussion last year about Lando Norris.
We did, didn't we?
And I said not only can he win it, but he will win it. And I got to be honest, I said that mainly because I was working for F1 at the time and I wanted to keep interest in the second half of the season. I'm not going to lie. I didn't really think he had much of a shot, but I thought let's pump this as much as we can. Keep it
I love
interesting.
that we now get Buxton Unleashed. This is phenomenal.
Unfiltered.
It's
But look, if it was anyone else, you'd probably say it's tough. Lando had 2/3 of a season to overcome that kind of a deficit, couldn't do it. But this isn't Lando, this is Max, and Max can do the impossible. And all it's going to take is, another Piastri implosion, or for McLaren to start getting freaked out about team orders or whatever it might be, and start handing these points over to Max. Let's not forget, since the restart of the season, since the summer break, he's had a second place and 2 firsts. If he can perform at Singapore, which has always been a bogey track for him, it's the only one on the calendar that he's not won at. Then I think there's a very serious chance, and Andrea Stella thinks there's a very serious chance. And you cannot discount Max, you can never discount him. And is 69 points a huge total? Yes, and people will look to history and say that kind of a deficit has never been overcome. But I think I'm right in saying that kind of a total has actually been eked out by somebody who's been leading and then, sort of stretched that gap over the rest of the field in the latter half of the season. So it's doable. And honestly, I think I said it after Baku, with the form that he's in right now, I would not be shocked at all if Max takes a 5th consecutive title.
That would be very Max Verstappen, wouldn't it? Just make a little bit of history, just come back and just smash it. Do you think it's a mental game now for McLaren?
Yeah, but it has been all the way through the year. They've had the best car. They've got 2 phenomenal drivers, but they're making mistakes by themselves, and they're making it too complicated. They're taking something that should be really, really easy, and they're overthinking it to the point that they risk throwing it away. But let's not forget, it's not like Red Bull have suddenly come on song. They had a good car at the start of the year. They won races at the start of the year. Then they sort of tailed off a little bit, and now they're just, they're bringing it back. So they are a threat. Max is a threat. He's always a threat. You could stick him in a tractor. You could stick him in an F2 car, and he'd still probably turn up and qualify the thing mid-grid. Obviously that's an exaggeration, but you just feel with Max, wherever he goes, whatever he drives, whatever level of the field he's up against, there is always the potential for magic. And I honestly can't wait for these last few races, because once you get to Singapore, the season just disappears. It goes so fast. But I can see him racking up a bunch of wins and putting some serious heat on McLaren in these final races.
Magic Max. I'd like to see him race in a tractor, actually. I think that would be very exciting. Christian, this feels like a really important weekend for Max and Red Bull, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and Will's just touched on it. It's historically not a track where they've been great. If you remember the Invincible year, it was the only one where a Red Bull car didn't win, where Carlos won.
Yeah.
So it's historically not. It's just certain cars suit certain tracks' characteristics, and Red Bull have. Don't forget, since 2020, since the rule changes for the start of the 2022 season, we've really seen evolution with these cars rather than revolution. That we've not really seen. Right, we're going to rip up and start again. We have seen dramatic changes in design from Adrian Newey, but still, it's until a rule set is reset completely, you can't necessarily say, oh, well, that's irrelevant now. So if you look back in recent seasons, it's not been a strong Red Bull track. So bear in mind, it's not been a strong Red Bull year, but as we just said earlier, they are making steps to make the car more drivable. If we see a Max Verstappen win this weekend and we see a Red Bull front row, even if we see a Max Verstappen top 2, I think everything Will's just said gets supercharged. It's like, oh, I think we really are in Red Bull title challenge territory here if they can do it this weekend of all weekends, because it's just not been a happy hunting ground. There are so many various factors. We've seen the Mercedes car not work better on circuits where it's cool, for example, so it's done well in Vegas. You could list all the different characteristics all day as to why this particular car performs well here and this particular car performs well here. So if Red Bull have made this car drivable in Singapore, and Max, we know if it's capable, Max will do it, then you're thinking, wow, they could really make McLaren sweat a lot here.
I wonder what Max's mentality is, because it wasn't that long ago that he was saying, well, yeah, we're not in the title race. That's done for us now. Do you think he will think, I could do it here?
I think Max sort of looks at each weekend just as an individual weekend. Certainly when there's.
I was just about to say exactly the same, Will.
And he'll just go into it and be like, right, let's get the best out of this that we possibly can. And there is no jeopardy for him. Whatever he does this year, whether if he finishes second in the championship, that's already a massive result. Yeah. If he feels he can win the title, I don't think he's going to freak himself out about it. That's not Max's style. That's not who he is. He's just going to go into every weekend and try and win the damn race. And if he can do that every single weekend to the end of the season, or just finish top 2, top 3, whatever, and see where the chips fall with the McLaren drivers and start chipping away at that lead. We've already had a massive swing over the course of the last 2 weekends, you keep that kind of a momentum going, you keep that kind of swing going, it's as Christian says, it's going to put a lot of heat. It's going to get pretty sweaty for McLaren.
When you've won as much as he has in Formula One, when you've achieved as much as he has, you don't have the mental pressure that a Lando or an Oscar are under because they've not won a title. So Max is just turning up, racing pressure-free, enjoying himself, doing the best he can. That's when elite athletes perform at their best, when they've got just a total sense of freedom, a total belief in themselves. Max has that in abundance. And if he wins this World Championship, he's delighted. He wants to win more than anything. If he doesn't win this World Championship, it doesn't matter. He'll get plenty more opportunities to win races in the rest of his Formula One career. He's already proved everything. He's already said this season, you can't win them all. I've had a nice time. He's just so chilled, and that's how athletes perform at their best. So I think, and that's dangerous if you're McLaren. That's dangerous to be up against someone like that. The more these guys win, your Hamiltons, your Schumachers, the more difficult they become to beat because the pressure's off them to an extent. Their legacy's secured, and they just become more and more self-confident.
But particularly for this year, he has absolutely nothing to lose. As you said, he's already written this year off. So finishes third in the Drivers' Championship, already brilliant. Finishes second, above expectations. Fights for the title and potentially wins it, one of the all-time great seasons. It's he wins no matter what happens.
Will, speaking of self-confidence, let's talk about Christian Horner. Since the last time we were on the podcast, he's officially left Red Bull. Yeah. That confused a lot of people. He was removed as his position of team principal. He was still technically employed by the company. Since then, there's been lots of conversations with lots of lawyers about size of payouts and that sort of thing. And now there's been the conscious uncoupling and they are officially divorced.
Yes.
Lots of links speculating as to where he will turn up in Formula One in the future. Haas being linked, Alpine being linked. We know, we've heard enough from good sources that he wants his next F1 adventure to be where he can be a Toto Wolff style part owner of a team, have financial sway in it. Will, these rumours are swirling around all over the place. Where, if anywhere, in the not too distant future do you see him popping back up?
If I'd been paid what he'd been paid to disappear, you'd never see me again.
No, I was about to say, get me on an island, get me out of it. Yeah, goodbye, everybody.
I'd go and live on a tropical island, and nobody would ever see me ever again.
Same. Me and loads of dogs.
If he wants to throw himself back into the fire, and I'm sure he does because he's competitive. Alpine for me has always made the most sense because of his close links with Flavio. Haas is more likely that he'd get some equity there, but that's a massive job for him. And, we're seeing more and more this move towards engineers, running teams as team principals, as CEOs, whatever. And they're doing great under IO. Is Christian going to have the financial freedoms and the investment that he would need to turn that thing around and take it to where he needs to? It's a very difficult. It's a difficult one to answer, and I think it's going to be a difficult one for Christian to make his mind up on because he's come from a world where he clicked his fingers and he asked Dietrich Mateschitz for the money, and Dietrich said yes or no, and it was done. Wherever else you go, that will not happen because he's not going to be at a Ferrari or a Mercedes or anywhere that's going to have that kind of a budget to play with. So, does he want to go from managing Manchester City to managing Scunthorpe? Where he's not going to have the budget, he's not going to have the opportunities to play the game that he used to play. So I don't know. I don't know where that sort of competitive instinct would actually take him, or if he'd fancy something in a different formula or a different sport or whatever it might be. I think we just automatically assume, Christian's definitely going to come back, but I don't know where it makes sense.
If you look at all the teams, it's like, no, probably wouldn't. Yeah. Probably wouldn't. Like, where's the gap?
Well, it's also okay. Alpine, you only have to to go into Alpine for a coffee and somebody says, "Don't believe the rumours, we don't want to sell," they couldn't be any more sort of briefing. It's not true, guys. We don't want to sell. Renault is committed to the project. All right, we don't think we need to make our own engines, but with Mercedes engines, we're confident for the future. We've got Pierre leading us. They're really, I mean, time will tell whether this is all true, but that's what they're briefing. Haas, I was going to make the same point Will does. You've made real progress with Io Komatsu.
Yeah.
So is Gene Haas, the owner, go, I'll give up some equity and therefore some profit, having spent years making this thing profitable at this point when they are doing well, to put Christian in, who is unproven in getting results and building a team forward when he's under tight budgets? I think it's a massive gamble for a team like Haas. Plus, let's be honest, it does bring unwanted negative PR.
Well,
so
I mean, it brings, since losing Gunther, they've lost a lot of the PR that they did have around this very strong character of a team principal. So if you brought Christian in as a CEO rather than as a team principal, that in and of itself puts a massive spotlight on the team. So, you're weighing it up then, aren't you? The commercial positives and negatives of having that spotlight versus the, inherent negative headlines, which will follow Christian around now, no matter what he does and where he goes. So, if that is a price that Gene Haas is willing to pay in order to get that spotlight on his team, then perhaps he takes it. But it's a difficult one. It's a really, really difficult one. And as you guys are saying, it's not easy to figure out where he slots in, and if anybody would be willing to take that gamble.
I think he just needs to just be a housewife for Jerry Halliwell.
Oh, I'd love to be a house husband. It'd be the greatest.
Oh, me too. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it?
With a very hefty 8 figures to dry your tears with. I think it'd be all right.
It's all right, isn't it? You can go to sleep with all those millions sat in your bank account. That's nice. That's nice. I just wouldn't bother working again. Anyway, that is Christian Horner's future. But when we're back after the break, we're going to talk about Charles Leclerc's future. Welcome back, everybody. In that break, Will was just telling us about his snacks in America.
Yes.
Chocolate-coated gummy bears.
Chocolate-covered gummy bears are a game changer. I have grown something of an addiction to Twinkies and Twizzlers, which is, I was going to put like a fisheye lens on the camera so you could fit all of me in the screen. There's a lot more of me than there was 6 months ago. I've had to join a gym to try and, I've got 6 months off, basically to try and get the weight off to go back on air again next year.
What's a Twinkie? Because in certain areas that I sometimes socialise in, that means something quite different.
Something very different, doesn't it? Yes, a Twinkie is a cream-filled
Oh, God.
cake.
It's a cake, sure. It's a cake.
It's a cake.
I slightly regret bringing it up. In other ways, don't. It's a cake. Betty, Charles Leclerc. It's a cake.
Yeah, let's talk about Charles Leclerc. Aston Martin.
Speaking of snacks.
Speaking of snacks. I'd have him covered in chocolate. Anyway, Aston Martin, Mercedes and McLaren, all teams which...
It's not even subtle. I'd have him covered in chocolate. What's wrong with you?
It's a joke. We're talking about chocolate covered seeds. Anyway, right. Aston Martin, Mercedes, McLaren, all teams which Charles Leclerc's people have been talking to in recent weeks, if you believe all of those rumours. Christian, do you believe the rumours?
I do believe the rumours. This has been the thing that since we were last on, most people have DM'd me about, being like, oh my God, it can't be true. Is it Charles leaving Ferrari? Well, no, listen, Charles won't have made any decisions yet about his future. I'd be surprised if he has. I mean, he might be thinking, I'm definitely going. But when you're a driver like Charles Leclerc, you are always looking at possible other options. So at this point, where we're 2/3 of the way through a season with a rule change coming up, I think you're being slightly naive if you're the management of Charles Leclerc and you don't at least spend some time considering other options. And realistically, those 3 teams you just mentioned, Betty, Aston, Mercedes and McLaren, they are the ones that you think, okay, they would probably be fighting for titles at some point in the near future. Aston's investment with Adrian Newey and the big new factory, Mercedes and McLaren speak for themselves. They are potential destinations. So it's not necessary, even if the rumours are true, it's not unusual for a driver's representatives to have casual chats. It happens all the time. The bigger question, I think, here is, I have been an advocate for Ferrari, if they are going to return to winning ways, sticking with a plan for a bit. It's quite Manchester United in football in its thing. You've chopped and changed so much, at some point you need to stick to a plan with all the people in place and not keep chopping and changing. So does Charles believe in that plan? Are Ferrari showing enough that they can fight for titles? How is their engine going to be next year in a formula that will become more engine dependent? I'm not loving the rumours coming out about Ferrari's chances next year. The fact they've had such a big, almost step backwards a bit this year doesn't fill me full of hope for the future. But that said, I do think they need to stick with Fred and stick with a plan for a long period of time. Will, what do you think to all this? Do you see Charles winning in Reds and winning not just races, but a title?
I don't think I can picture Charles wearing anything but red. He is as much Ferrari as Ferrari is him. But when was the last time Ferrari won a driver's title?
2007, wasn't it?
Yeah. When was the last time they won a constructors title? 2008.
Yeah.
So, they're going on 2 decades without a win in either championship. And I'm with you. You've got to let Fred do his thing. You've got to give it time. But how much time does Charles have? And how much time will he want to give to a project if next year, with this massive change of regulation, doesn't see Ferrari start on the front foot? And this is the thing, we're stepping into the great unknown for everybody. And I think, there was so much talk about Max and would Max stay or would Max go? And for everybody, the big determination will be, how does the team fare in the first season of the new regulations? And then everybody will be able to make up their mind as to where they want to go. Charles will be massively on people's radars, because I think that Charles is one of those few that you could consider up, on a mega level. Max is up there all on his own, but you have your Charles and your Piastris, at that next kind of level, next level down.
Yeah.
And there aren't many drivers in the field, I think, that really hold a candle to Charles and to what he could achieve in the right car, in the right circumstances, and at that right time. I think Max said that if he could have any other driver's qualifying pedigree and prowess, it would be Charles. If he was creating the ultimate F1 driver, he'd want Charles' qualifying pace in there. He's on one lap incredible. He's a very unifying driver within a team. Could I see him at a Mercedes? Absolutely. Could I see him replacing Fernando at Aston Martin? Absolutely. Could I see him at a McLaren if they lost a Lando, or an Oscar? I don't think Oscar's going to go anywhere, because I think Zach's going to have him bolted down to an ironclad contract for the foreseeable.
But not Lando.
Not so much anymore. I think Lando was the favourite for a long time. I think Oscar might be now. They're trying to do this whole, 2 number 1 drivers. It never works. Someone always ends up getting off. So the 2 number 1 things just doesn't work. But
let's come back to that. I actually really want to come back to that.
Yeah,
that's a really interesting point. Just the final thing on Charles before we move on. He's 27, right?
Oh, he's ancient.
He's ancient. I agree with everything you've said, Will. I think he wants to win in Ferrari.
Oh, yeah.
He's committed to the project, but I don't think he's so committed to the project that he will finish his F1 career and think, oh God, I could have won a title, but I stuck with Ferrari. You just don't want to be. By the way, if you've never read Will's book, it's brilliant. Will's book is absolutely fantastic. And Will, as you were talking then, I was reminded of a bit in your book where you're talking about Daniel Ricciardo, because you do a nice little bit of each decade where you talk about sort of the one that got away almost. I just think, go back to the 2014 season. Daniel Ricciardo, this was a season dominated by Mercedes. Daniel Ricciardo finishes third in the World Championship behind the two Mercedes drivers. His teammate is Sebastian Vettel, right? The world champion. Ricciardo finishes on 238 points, Vettel on 167. 238 points, rather, with Vettel on 167. At that point, you're thinking, this guy's going to win a world championship. This guy is just going to win a world championship. And then all of a sudden, I always sort of went through Ricciardo's career thinking, at some point he'll find himself in the right place to win a world championship. And he just didn't. And then all of a sudden there was a rule change where his skill set wasn't suited to the new rules so much.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that guy, do you? Where all of a sudden you're 31, you're 32, your chance just hasn't come. And I think Charles' ceiling is higher than Daniel's, but you take my point. All right, he's still young, but my God, time flies in this sport.
Yeah, it does. And you want to make
your career doesn't last forever.
You want to make the right decisions, and Daniel's career, unfortunately, is, an abject lesson in making the wrong moves. I think a driver, like Jean Alesi, it could be quite comparable to potentially to Charles. He was beloved by Ferrari, and he went where his heart told him to go, rather than taking the decisions and ending up at the teams that potentially would have handed Jean the chance to fight for world championships, because Jean could have ended up at Williams in the early 1990s and quite possibly, would have been a world champion in 92 or 93 if he'd ended up at Williams back then. But he chose Ferrari. He followed his heart. And as a result, he only ever won one Grand Prix. He's a Ferrari legend. He's a Formula One legend because he was one of the most liked characters in the sport. But did he ever achieve what his immense talent promised that he could have done? No, he didn't. And that's the great quandary with Charles is, do you stick this out and stay loyal to a fault in the hope that at some point it turns around during your tenure? Or do you watch the opportunities fly by while you stick to your guns? Because, sod's law, you leave Ferrari just as they get good, but how long is he going to give it? Because
Alonso, for example.
But exactly, the list is endless of people who've moved at entirely the wrong time. But Charles just feels like, he's a Ferrari driver. He's always been a Ferrari driver since his junior days when he was backed by Ferrari, all the way through to today. Can you see him with anybody else? No, but we said that about Lewis. You could never see him with anybody else other than Mercedes. And okay, this year's not going great, but that's another question as well. Lewis isn't going to be at Ferrari forever. And if it continues as it's gone this year, if it's still a nightmare next year, how long does he stay there? And if Charles leaves too, what does that say, A, about Ferrari and their future, if they're going to have to look for two new drivers? B, what does that do to Fred's tenure as team principal? Because you lose Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc with a car that still isn't winning world championships. Well, that's him done. So the next 12 months are pivotal, I think, in the careers of three really well-liked and really well-respected people in Formula One, Lewis, Charles, and Fred. And they're all tied together, because if it doesn't come together next year, then we could see some massive moves happening.
It's going to be so interesting. I feel like Ferrari fans need a good break. They need a win, I think, generally. We are going to take another quick break, but when we're back, we're going to talk McLaren, we're going to talk Singapore, and we're also going to talk about Will Buxton.
Oh, no.
Will, we are so happy that you like coming on the podcast, because we've missed you. We've missed your views, and we've missed you being in and around the F1 paddock. But it looks like you are having a bloody brilliant time covering IndyCar this season. What was it like entering a new paddock for the first time?
Oh, really daunting. Like, really scary. Yeah, really, really scary. But it couldn't have been better. People couldn't have been nicer, friendlier, more welcoming. It's IndyCar is an amazing championship. It's a very warm and welcoming series. The teams, the drivers, everybody have just been absolutely lovely. The family that I've built in a very short time at Fox have been incredible on Fox Sports. It's been huge fun. But yeah, IndyCar's I see in IndyCar what I saw sort of 10 years ago in Formula One, when it was coming to the end of the Bernie Ecclestone era and Liberty was starting to take over, which is this amazing sport that had the potential to explode into this global phenomenon. And Liberty did that job with Formula One. And I see that potential with IndyCar as well, because it is such a thrilling championship. And if you love your open wheel racing, if you love your Formula One, then you will love IndyCar as well, because it is just brilliantly exciting. Anybody can win from anywhere on the grid on any weekend. It's just that this season that person happened to be Alex Palou pretty much more often than anybody else, because he's incredible. I think he could step over to Formula One and be competitive in an instant. I genuinely think he's one of the most gifted drivers that I've seen in a very long time. Kind of up on a Piastri, just sub Max Verstappen level. He's absolutely brilliant, and on every type of circuit, because in IndyCar you have road and street courses like you do in Formula One, but you also have short ovals and you have the super speedways as well, which take a completely different driving style and mindset to get your head around. So he won on all type of track this year. One on the roads, one on the streets, won the Indy 500, and he won on short ovals. So Palou's the real deal, and that's why Zach Brown fought so hard to get him, and is now still taking him to court over the fact that Palou reneged on the deal when it sort of turned for him. But I love IndyCar. I've always loved IndyCar, and it's great catching it. There's so many F1 people there that I've known from my years in F1 who've kind of moved over to the States, whether they're drivers or people who work at the teams. It's full of mates. It's full of people I've known forever. So it's lovely.
Ah.
And it is so lovely following your socials and watching the coverage as well and seeing you just having the best time. It's just so lovely, Will. And you mentioned those names there. Colton Herta is obviously a huge name to come out of IndyCar. For those that don't know, he's 26. He was its youngest ever winner back in 2019. Will, you're the best person to ask about this. We have a lot of American people watching and listening to this podcast. So he's joining Cadillac as its reserve driver next year. Will, what can you tell us about him? Do you expect to see him on the F1 grid in the coming years? Because so many people thought when Cadillac would come in, they'd announce an American driver. Maybe there's not the obvious candidate at the moment and they've gone for that experience. But there's a lot being talked about at the moment with his potential move over from Indy to F1.
Yeah, and take a moment to think about what Colton Herta is sacrificing here. He was rumoured to be on the highest salary in IndyCar. And he has left that behind to go and race in Formula 2, to become a reserve driver at Cadillac, to chase his dream of becoming a Formula 1 driver. Number one, I'm going to get this out of the way. I've said it a number of times. The stipulation of the super license points is utterly ridiculous, and it needs a shift. I understand that the FIA wants to protect their junior formulas in Formula 2 and Formula 3 and get people going through those to amass the points to get to Formula 1. IndyCar is not a feeder series. It is not a preparatory series. If you are racing in IndyCar and you are finishing top 4 in the championship, don't tell me that you don't deserve the same number of points as a driver finishing top 4 in Formula 2, because that's these drivers are phenomenally gifted. They are adaptable to different types of circuits that you're not going to see in Formula 1, and to racing at speeds, frankly, that you don't see in Formula 1. You're hitting top speed of over 240 miles an hour at the Indy 500. You're averaging 230 miles an hour on a lap. They are incredible. That said, did Colton Herta do enough under the parameters of the super license structure as it is? No, he didn't. So does he deserve a super license with the structure the way it is? No, he doesn't. And had he, done better than finishing second last year more frequently, he would have the points to have a super license, and Cadillac could, and most likely probably would have put him in the car next season. But I think that would have been a mistake, because I don't think Cadillac will have a car. They will not operationally be at the level that they need to be to give anybody the opportunity to be fighting for points, let alone podiums and race victories. You can't just walk into Formula One and expect it to be a cakewalk. And I don't think they are expecting that to happen. That's why they've got Valtteri. That's why they've got Checo, two very experienced drivers who know what it is, not only to win races, but to race for teams that have put together dominant World Championship runs.
It will be really interesting, though, won't it, to see what happens. It will also be interesting to see what Cadillac are like. Let's focus on this season, though. We've got Singapore this weekend, which means pretty light, late nights, ice baths, and the inevitable thirst traps that all the drivers like to post, but in particular George Russell.
I once interviewed Lewis Hamilton after a session in Singapore, and he wore his bathrobe. So let's not go there with thirst traps, because...
they're all guilty of it, aren't they? They're all guilty of it nowadays. It's got worse as well, though, all of them.
To be fair, after racing in Singapore, you just need to get your head in that ice, don't you? ASAP, ASAP. Will, Lando was really good here last year, wasn't he? Oscar obviously had a shocker in Azerbaijan. Do you expect him to bounce Baku?
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Thanks.
Lovely.
I think we might have Baku to Baku to Baku. Max Verstappen wins.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look, could you imagine in this amazing season, this topsy-turvy season, that Max ticks the box of the one circuit that he's not yet won on, to go 3 wins in a row and really give momentum to this potential championship charge? I think it could be incredible. Or, we could get a turnaround and get a win for a Mercedes, or somebody that we're not expecting. Maybe Ferrari.
Maybe.
They've got recent history at this place. Admittedly, the car this year is not anywhere where it needs to be. But Singapore's that kind of track where, again, magic can happen every now and then. You get that little sort of sprinkling of magic dust on the place, and you get some pretty crazy results. So I'm excited to see. And
Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Carlos is on a run at the moment, isn't he?
Exactly.
But I think I like the changes that they made to the circuit. I like what that's done to the race and to the lap itself. So let's see how it works out. But McLaren have got to bounce back. And they've got to get back to winning ways, and whichever one of them, and particularly for Oscar, because Baku was a really odd weekend. That's not an Oscar Piastri weekend. I don't think I've ever seen him make so many mistakes. But McLaren are going to have to keep answering questions over the papaya rules and the equity and the parity that they want to create between their drivers, because it has got a bit silly. And after Monza, there are the big questions. And I'm surprised there weren't more jokes, actually, during practice in Baku when Oscar was forced to sit out because he had that engine problem. People saying, well, how much time's Lando going to have to sit out this session now? Because got to make it fair, guys. It's not Oscar's fault. That's a team issue, not a driver issue. And you said that team issues would be equal. So,
I think, Betty, it's the biggest weekend of Oscar Piastri's career. He needs to make sure that that Baku was just a one-off bad weekend, a really bad weekend that he needs to leave in the past. But don't forget, go back a race prior to that as well. With Italy, Lando was also quicker there. So there's pressure on Oscar coming into this weekend. It's the first time I can remember this season where back-to-back Landos look the overall quicker package. So there's pressure on Oscar this weekend. I just wonder... go on, Betty.
I was going to say on that, with Oscar, he's really interesting. And so many people compliment his mentality. How he's so calm under pressure. He's just he seems a bit unmovable. And I think what is going to help him is that he just doesn't really seem to get too high with all of the highs, and I don't think he gets too low with the lows.
Yeah. Well, but he needs to prove that, because it's all very well that coming across off track, which it does. This weekend is a proof of that on track, because if he goes and has another stinker, well, clearly externally he's not showing it, but internally he must be. So that's why I think it's a test. I just want to pick up on what Will, I'm interested in your thoughts on how the title battle will play out if it is between the two McLaren drivers. But you picked up on something we've not got into, and there'll be loads of time for this on future episodes. But we were talking a little bit about how the long-term driver market will shape out, and it sort of relates to this season for me, because I can see a situation where the McLaren driver that gets beaten eventually, as you said, Will, they're doing all of this just to equal, but one of these two is going to get beaten.
Yes.
And I remember I mentioned the Daniel Ricciardo season earlier, where once Vettel had been, he was the Red Bull golden boy. Ricciardo came in, beat him. Vettel had to leave to go and have a reset, right? To just think, I've been beaten here. And then it happened to Ricciardo, where Max came in and Daniel thought, I need to go. I need to have my own space here. It feels to me like that's inevitable with McLaren, Will, that one of those two will have to go at some point, and that might be the thing that triggers another driver market move like the Lewis one did. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I do. And, with the push for parity, someone's always going to be annoyed because one driver is always going to come off second best. There is no such thing as a dead heat in Formula One. So whichever driver does come off second best, they're going to be looking at every single nuance of the season, being like, well, were they given more opportunities than me, or were they given preferential strategy or treatment or whatever? Because when you try and have two number ones, invariably it creates drivers who are at loggerheads with one another, because they're searching for the minute differences that lost them a championship. And very rarely will they look at themselves and say, well, it was on me. It'll be down to the team and how the team ultimately played things. And the team is doing its best to create this parity, but the harder they try and the more they involve themselves in it and the more they micromanage it or try to micromanage it, then the driver who comes out second best will believe that it was micromanaged in a way that didn't positively sort of help them. And that's really, really dangerous, because at least at the end of the day, you could say, well, it was just bad luck. Really sorry. But if you try to compensate for that bad luck, then you land yourself in a huge amount of trouble that you didn't need to, because racing is cruel and racing is unfair, and you cannot possibly write rules within the team that will cover every single scenario in order to make it as fair as you deem it should be to please both of your drivers. Because guess what? Only one of them is going to end up being happy. I think one of them will. One of them. But again, let's see what the car does next year. This might be the only opportunity that McLaren has to win a driver's title for the next 5-10 years. We don't know that.
Yeah.
Oh God, how livid will you be if you're the driver that comes second?
Yeah.
Or doesn't win?
Yeah, exactly. And let's say Piastri ends up losing this thing by a couple of points, and is then really annoyed that he gave back the position at Monza. You see,
I think we've got a lot of fun between now and the end of the year, haven't we? It's going to be really bloody interesting.
I remember when we talked about this season, the one thing that just kept coming up, doesn't matter who you spoke to, was how are McLaren going to handle these two drivers? And it's just, you just don't know if they're handling it right, do you? It's so tricky.
Well, there's a certain point where you have to take your hands off the wheel, as the team, and you have to just let it play out how it plays out. Slow pit stops are a factor in Formula 1. They happen. You cannot allow it to get to a point where, I joked about it after Monza, saying, you have a mechanical DNF. What are you going to do? Park the other car? Because that's the logical conclusion of where you take this thing. Because if it's something out of a driver's hands, they didn't make the mistake. Something happened to the car, or there was a fault in the pit stop or whatever that cost them time, and you're trying to make this fair. The logical extrapolation of all that, if you take it to the nth degree, is driver's engine goes bang, so you park the other car because that's fair. Otherwise, how is it? But that's stupid, right? It's completely stupid, and it would never happen, and it should never happen. But if you are playing these games, where does it start and where does it end? And should teams be trying to micromanage to that degree? Because you're just going to one of them off. You're going to both of them off.
I was just about to say, we'll find out, won't we? We're going to find out.
The thing is, though, whatever happens, one of them is going to end up off no matter what. And also, Zach Brown always says, just let them race. Well, just let them race then. Stop getting involved. Stop getting involved, Zach. Sit back. Right, predictions. What are we thinking? It's also worth saying that McLaren could actually be crowned champions. Back-to-back Constructors Champions.
And they will be. And they deserve it. They've done a phenomenal job. And again, I look back to where they were, what was it now, 2-3 seasons ago, and they were bottom of the pack after pre-season testing, slowest of the bunch. To have turned around that team in the short period that they have over the last 3 seasons is nothing sort of incredible. And I don't think we praise the team enough for the work that they have done, for what Zach has done, for what Andrea has done, for what Gilles de Ferran did, bless his soul and memory of Gilles, what he did behind the scenes, what everybody at that team has done to turn around the horror show that was McLaren into, and it will be, back-to-back Constructors Champions, whatever happens with the Drivers' Championship. It's an unbelievable story, and we really cannot do enough to give credit to that team for what they have done.
Agree more.
And thoroughly deserved. And then we go into this, tear everything up, chuck it in the skip, start again next year, and it's anyone's guess. But for this weekend, I'm going to go with the Max win. Let's go with the Max win, the one track that he hasn't won on. Let's give that to Max, and let's get this championship fight going.
Hey, okay, Christian, what are you saying?
3rd, Hamilton. 2nd, Verstappen. 1st, Norris.
Oh, where's Oscar?
1st, Norris.
4th.
No, okay. I'm gonna say 1st, Oscar. 2nd, Verstappen, and 3rd, Norris.
Interesting. I just have a feeling that Max will be good, but not quite good enough to win. I have a feeling Lando will be good round here, but then we're going to see Oscar really bounce back in future races. Yeah. And I've just got a funny feeling that, as Will said, Ferrari have been all right round here in recent seasons, and that Lewis will just pull something out in Roscoe's memory.
Well, that would be really nice.
If we're doing a top 3, I'll go Lewis in 2nd. Because Lewis pulled out one of the all-time great laps around this place. Like Lewis around Singapore is just gold dust.
It's okay.
And P3, let's go for a wild card and let's do another Carlos podium. Why not?
I'd love that as well. That would be amazing.
And no McLaren on the podium because they will qualify in the front row of the grid and take each other out at turn 1, lap 1.
Oh, if they do that now, if that happens now, we'll play this clip back forevermore. Say Will predicted it. Honestly, Will, thanks so much for coming on. Honestly, Will, we love having you on, and we hear every time you're on. Don't think I'm just saying this. I mean, you get the crazies, of course you do, but we hear so many people say, "Oh, it's so good to hear Will talking about F1 again." Will, we love seeing what you're doing and having the best time in IndyCar. But F1 fans miss you and love hearing you, and we love that you come on and talk to us. So thanks, Will.
Bless you, mate.
Really, really appreciate having you.
Thank you both so much. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Will. And also, we will be delivering you a Singapore debrief, probably a bit later than usual, maybe the UK night time or something like that. So just subscribe, then it will just land, and you'll know when it's coming.
It will get there. We're just both very busy people, and we've both got things on Sunday. But we're going to do some late night podding, aren't we, Betty?
Late night podding. I'm going to have a glass of wine whilst we do it. It'll be so fun.
That's a nice idea. All right, I'll have a drink when we do it. Yeah, lovely. I'll do that. We'll have a drink when we're doing it. Yeah, lovely.
You join us. Have a drink whilst you listen or watch.
Nice.
Yeah,
and on the basis of how loose this one got, Sunday nights will be even more fun.
It'll be chaos. Be absolute chaos. Lovely. Will, thank you. Betty, thank you. See you Sunday evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.